Hello and welcome back to yet another Geek Show where we're going to talk about the movie Dragon Quest, Your Story. I'm your host, Alex Ecker.
I'm your host, Dalton Lee. Was this a musical now?
And I'm your host, Jacob. So yeah, I guess so.
Part 6.
Okay, guys. I, first of all, have never played a Dragon Quest game, but after watching this, I feel like I have. It's exactly what I imagined.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is a fantastic game series and movie wasn't half bad.
Okay, so I know you two are actually familiar with the franchise, but Jacob, I think you said you actually played Dragon Quest V, the game this is based on.
Yeah, and it's actually like how I almost always imagined it as a kid when I would play. Because there's bits where I would see characters, and even though it was like pixel art, the designs are so iconic because of Akira Toriyama that immediately I was like, oh my God, yes, finally. And I'm like, there's Percy, there's Luca. And like you could just see people and like kind of dive into it and actually like go, oh my God, like they're recreating the characters faithfully. This is so refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at first, when I first started watching this movie, there was almost something claymation about it in the CGI. But then, like, as it progressed, it did get better. Like, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the
You have to get used to it. They're textured kind of plasticky.
Almost, yeah.
They look like action figures almost, yeah.
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 I think something else that kind of threw me off was the lip movements weren't for US. So like once I got over that, I
guess that's more obvious in CG animation than it is in traditional 2D anime where lip syncing still isn't in sync in the native language.
Right, exactly. I don't know. At first, like I said, it did feel a little choppy, but it does smooth out a lot more throughout the entire movie, I think. So you said, Jake, you said this is actually fairly faithful to the movie, correct? Or to the game? Sorry.
Game.
From what it's been a very long time since I played 5, but there were story beats that I did start to recognize where it kind of threw me for a loop because I'd sit there and I would start to like call stuff out, but then I was realizing like it had been a good 8 years since I played the game, but there were still decent bits and locations.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Okay.
I really attribute it to again Akira Toriyama's artwork and designs that like there'd be iconic places that I'd just be like, I recognize that town. I was like, this is the moment where Luca meets this person. And like, it's just, without going too much into spoilers for people who haven't seen it or played the game.
Yeah.
They actually cover a lot of the twists and world building very well.
World bidding.
World bidding.
Yeah.
Actually, for the record, this will be a full spoiler discussion. So we won't worry about spoiling. You worry about not being here if you don't want to be spoiled. There's your warning.
There
Continue.
we go.
Yeah. I really appreciated the fact that, for example, when after the beginning, when you find out the character is going to become a slave, and when they break out pretending to be like dead bodies and stuff, the enemies there that were holding the spears, how not only were they faithful to the original designs, they were also different colors to like show like differences in difficulty, sort of so to speak. That was a nice little touch that I really appreciated. Man, I loved just a lot of this movie. It was the character designs were incredibly faithful. At least like I know the monster knowledge.
The moment it got past the like NES footage opening, and into the actual animation, I immediately thought to myself, I didn't know Japan made CG movies that looked this good and had this much money put into them.
Yeah.
But I guess Dragon Quest is like a way bigger deal there, like one of the biggest, most important franchises, just one of those things everyone knows, and it's really not that here at all. So I guess that explains all the money that went into it just for it to end up on Netflix in the States.
Right.
But yeah, it's gorgeous.
The faithfulness to the magic names like swoosh and kaswoosh.
Okay, I thought that was a little too silly.
Yeah, like it's like the game took, I mean, the movie, Jesus, took itself like really seriously with like the sounds and like recreating little things where you do realize that for naming's sake, they were like, what do we do? Call it swoosh. Like, it's just like,
Right.
they're just throwing out some names every so often.
But if you kind of harken back to like the Toriyama art, like when I think of Toriyama, I sort of think like lighthearted but can get intense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it stayed faithful in that regard, at least for me.
I'm just saying Destructo Disc and Kamehameha sound a good bit less silly than Kaswoosh.
Kamehameha.
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 That's
what I meant.
Kamehameha. Not Kamehameha. Got stuck there for a second.
Yeah, just kind of
A glitch as it were. But I don't know. I know I didn't play Dragon Quest V. I actually, in the previous weekly we just recorded, I had mentioned that I played 8, and I know most of the monsters kind of stay faithful throughout the games, except for maybe like boss enemies and such. And there was a lot of times where I was like really appreciative of like even the scene when he's running in the desert and you see the golems chasing him. The golems looked pretty damn faithful. The music, even the music was very. It was all Dragon Quest soundtrack. Like every single time.
So I mean, I don't know Dragon Quest, but I was listening to it and I was going, "Oh, this is clearly just like an updated rendition of the music that was in the game
and everything." And it's
exactly
good to see that they like the care they go to with all that stuff is because you made a good point earlier. Dragon Quest is not big here, and it's actually that we have all the remakes and re-releases that we have. Even that the movie got dubbed is like a big deal for the fact that there are so many fans over here that I feel like it doesn't get as much like, I don't know, I guess either praise or attention, to the point where even with this movie, or even the most recent Dragon Quest game coming out on the Switch was just like a lot of fans consider a miracle that they even like pop up here.
Yeah. There's a lot of history in this entire franchise, and they encapsulated it very well in the movie. The one thing that I do kind of appreciate is the fact that they kind of took a little more liberty with the Toriyama art and didn't give him like the rounded top eyes and like
they didn't go far enough that he could come to them with some lawyers and be like, "Yo, we got a problem here."
Yeah. Well, you're doing a little bit too much to my stuff.
Right. I don't know. Like I don't really recognize any of the voice actors on the English dub or even on the Japanese dub. Do you guys notice any names in particular? Oh, well, Steve Bloom, of course, but
Steve Bloom, obviously.
Yeah. I was gonna say not that one.
Yeah,
that goes sorry. He's literally the first name, just because you're like, oh, you know who this is.
yeah.
Let's roll out the big gun.
You know.
Well, like it was interesting.
No,
like,
I don't recognize.
It was a bold choice of picking because there are a lot of Dragon Quest games that we know as American fans, even like that stuck out here, like Dragon Quest 8, the more recent one, even 10 was pretty big because it was on the DS at the time, and that got a lot. And Dragon Quest 5 was kind of like not so well known. I know it got re-released on the DS at some point, so I think it's one of the more that had like a very anthology-esque story. So it was kind of I guess like because I know like all of them are very loved, but it's like a bold one to go with. And it's like, let's start a movie franchise. Which one do we start on? The 5th game. It's like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if Final Fantasy was like, hey, let's make another attempt at a movie and make it a big, expensive, serious movie. Like, yeah, I'd be pretty blown away with shock if they were like, 3. Let's go with 3.
Yeah,
real 3, not American 3. That's the one.
Yeah,
clearly. But maybe that was the right call because JRPGs at the beginning are just kind of Dungeons and Dragons on a screen, and then they slowly through the next decade or two start having more meaningful, fleshed out, thoughtful stories with real character arcs and everything. And the approach this movie took of straight up adapting the story of the game, and I imagine cutting things out, but trying to leave it as coherent as possible. Like, they couldn't have done that with a modern JRPG, really.
Yeah, that's fair.
And even the first 3 games got re-released on the Switch actually recently as like this Dragon Quest pack, and you can see where the story really picks up. And the third one is actually one of my favorites because that's when the 2 games have had enough history that when you start the 3rd game, there's all this like past knowledge where if you've played it, it adds to it. But if you jump in at the 3rd one, skipping the first two, there's still this giant lore that they've created that the third game is a good jump in point, actually. In the sense that, like, actually picking the fifth game with, like, how it had an anthology story to it and had this almost like it felt like a generational kind of thing inside it. Really does fit a good, jump. Yeah, it's a good jump in point, thankfully.
Sure. And I will say that the time skips in the story do lead me to believe that this game I've never played that I'm talking about is a bit more sophisticated than the earliest of the JRPG era. Like, I imagine it was starting to really turn around here, and this was moving a little closer to, say, Final Fantasy VI than Final Fantasy III.
Because it was... if I remember the game right, because it was usually when you played a JRPG at the time, you were a single character, and either they were voiceless or it was like very much specifically, oh, I'm Link, I'm going to go do this. Oh, I'm Erdrick, I'm going to go do this. But with 5, you switched around a lot, and that was very different. Because at the time, it was more like you always had that focused journey. But with 5, they threw a lot at you, which was big at the time, but we didn't get that till way later. And I think it was still called Dragon Warrior at the time.
Yeah, you're right. Now, Jake, my question to you, this is something that I thought was really cool that they did where the main character, Luca, he wasn't actually the hero at the end. Like he wasn't the, what is it, the Zenithian warrior?
Yeah, the legendary hero who wielded the Zenithian sword,
Yeah. Was that an actual, like, detail that they put in the game? Like, he wasn't the hero, but his son was? Who wasn't born at that time?
It was interesting to see, because there was a big thing about... I believe the first hero is Erdrick, if I'm right about the naming, because there's a lot of like fan service to that in other games. But one of the big plots is usually it's like a hero reborn, where not all the games do it, but most of the time you're like, oh, you are the legendary hero reborn. Like, you're going on this big quest, and it's meant to be this big moment. But for the game to be like, hi, you're not the hero yet. You need to go do this quest for the hero. Was big at the time, because you start off as like, it's a very more personal story, I guess, because in the sense of you're not going to change the world, but you will help someone to do that as long as you get your quest done.
Yeah. I think that's kind of something that kind of got lost in translation, especially with newer games. You know, like you're not the one that's going to save the world, but yeah, you will be part of the impact. And I think that's something that's very underappreciated as far as like RPGs and stuff now.
So I guess my point here is that, I recently said on the show that when you're adapting a video game into a movie, you shouldn't do what was done here. You shouldn't try to recreate the story from the game. You should try to tell a new story in the same world. And they didn't do that here. And it worked out great because they picked a story that was simple enough to get away with that, and kind of, without all the grinding and all the combat in between, it worked out to be the right length for a movie. So I think that whole approach was, it was just right and perfect for, their first attempt at adapting a Dragon Quest movie here and at making a decent video game movie. All the way up until the ending. They, pretty accurate up until...
Yeah, I mean, with the ending, they had a fantastic fight. It was great choreographed scene, and then the Zenithian hero, Alice, who is Luca's son, he needed to stop the ultimate evil from being summoned. They hurled him up into the sky, and he was just about to vanquish the evil. And then you see fucking data corruption come out of I punched my microphone. You see this fucking data corruption fly out of the screen, and then you realize that you're in a fucking video game.
And then I shut my TV off and I left.
It's a masterclass on how to shit on a great movie you were making and just fuck your franchise.
Exactly. Here's the thing. They stopped. They stopped the movie to let you know it's a love letter to the movie when it was already a love letter enough.
Yeah, like, we get it. It's a video game movie. You've taken time to look at the designs, see the story, lovingly recraft it for fans, only for you to be at the end going, remember? We love you. Here's the movie. And people are like, we get it. Just take us back. We don't need you to be like, oh, it's like you're a part of it. And I'm like, that took me out.
Exactly.
Well, and get this, though. Couldn't it have been Still terrible, but just a little bit better if they had made it a love letter to gaming in general and not just Dragon Quest. The whole message works a little bit better if they're not going, this is Dragon Quest V VR. And it meant so much to me.
And you're like stuck in it. And like they could have, if they wanted to go this route, they could have gone the Lego movie route, where maybe like the characters realize they're in a fucking game. And like they have that moment of like reaching out or some shit. I would have like maybe given them a little credence despite them stealing it from the Lego movie. But this whole like, you're in VR, it's 2020. And I'm like, oh Christ.
Yeah, exactly. Like there is another game that kind of does that, where it's a video game where they realize that they're in a video game. I won't tell you unless you want to know, because I don't want to spoil it, because it's kind of a big plot point for this game. But they did it very super fucking well, because what was going on was they found these monsters that were deleting the universe, and they found a portal to a ship, and when in reality it was a portal out into the actual real world. And then somebody came up to them and like, oh my god, you're my favorite video game character in this game. And they're like, what are you talking about, game? And like that was probably one of the best ways to do that. Whereas this is just like, no, I'm a hacker. I've got leaked hacks or skills, and fuck you because you play Dragon Quest.
I've played several games, and I can't name drop them without spoiling it, Nier Automata, where it suddenly recognizes, where it suddenly goes meta and starts like interacting with you as a real person and that kind of thing. And a lot of the time it works. It turns out people that write video games might, on average, be better writers than whoever wrote this fucking movie.
Yeah.
Because they had a timeless tale. They picked a great one with a good anthology story, and then they took a shit on it. Because you're right, like the original Nier does that too, where when you play and get like how many friggin' endings that original game has, it plays with you. It plays your expectations, where you're like, oh, the game knows what I'm doing. It knows how to mess with me and really make you a part of it. Like in those experiences, it doesn't take me out. I feel more connected to the experience than ever. As with this movie, it's trying to be like, remember, we love you. This is an advertisement for maybe a VR version of Dragon Quest at some point. And I'm just like, I don't need that. You just had a great game come out. You re-released the original trilogy. Things were looking great. Americans are getting some Dragon Quest flavor. Things are good. We don't remember that we called it a different name. And then you're like, hey, remember? We love you guys. And I'm like, we know. We get it.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need the guy that's playing the game to white knight all over the game, because you know we're here because we already like it. Like, come on.
Yeah, like there's like maybe some kids who are like younger are going to see it on Netflix and go, oh look, an animated movie with swords and stuff. I can't wait to get into that. And that's great. But then there's older fans who are just like, yeah, we know what it means. We that's why we're here.
Yeah, it's Dragon Quest. It's obvious. Like, come on.
Yeah, because there was a super fan of 5, like being like, finally, like my favorite obscure Dragon Quest game. It's a movie, and then they get to that point going,
this journey that I feel like I really went on, and then the movie's like, hey, this journey, you really went on it. Fuck you.
Yeah,
you really went on it. Want to see someone who loves the game more than you? Check out this character we're adding out of nowhere.
I mean, there's a silver lining here, is at least the movie had an ending. So we knew when to cut it off.
Yeah. But would it have rectified the situation for you at all if at the same time, like at the reveal, they were like, oh, and by the way, Dragon Quest VR, Dragon Quest V VR is a real game and it releases on Steam tomorrow and it looks exactly like this movie.
See, that would have been bold.
Why am I doing a really bad Sonic impression to sell this to you?
Gotta go
fast.
That's
so way past cool. Actually, there is a video game series that did it. Actually, I thought was kind of right. There's a Netflix series, same platform. It's called Final Fantasy XIV, Dad of Light. And it's about how a son reconnects with his dad by playing Final Fantasy XIV. And they splice real game footage. And it shows like you have this whole why the game means a lot to him, why the game means a lot to his dad, and how it brings them closer. And then you sit there and go, okay, I already know the game's special. I like it. But I'm seeing how it's special to this person specifically and his relationship with his father. And it's a main crux of the story. Not where you're just going to introduce some rando at the end being like, God, I love this game so much. I'm playing it in the purest form on VR. And you're like, no one cares, man.
Dalton, I didn't realize you had a credit in this movie.
I didn't.
Oh, no. Like there's gonna be like ouch Dalton moments compilation of Alex just hurting you during the show,
right? Just fucking Mortal Kombat 1 uppercutting him. Finish him.
My follow-up gag before you derailed me there was going to be, I couldn't appreciate this game properly on the NES. I needed VR to sell this story.
Although, let's be fair, if this game came out on VR,
Sonic.
I'd fucking play it.
Hell yeah.
I hope to God that they don't put the fucking hacker in there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it ended that way, I'd be like, well, this movie sucks, but hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's no silver lining. There's just, hey, we wanted to write a love letter.
You know how they could have ended it? It's like they could have had you get to the end of the game, you beat the final boss, like they have a cheery moment, shit starts to digitize and goes out, kid pulls off the headset, there's a dad there, and the kid's just like, yeah. And you have a moment where the dad has shared his favorite game with a kid. And like it's because like the kid, like you can even have like a little flashback bit where the kid hated the NES. It sounds like stupid, but like he went to a different medium to share his favorite experience with a different generation.
Passing the torch. It makes total sense passing the torch.
And then you have like the kid go over to the NES, pick it up and be like, can we play one of the other ones? And it's a wholesome fucking moment. And then you just have this great little and you have like the NES Dragon Quest theme play in the background as they're playing. The credits could be them at a couch, things going down, having a great time. And that would have been wholesome.
And that fits the Toriyama style. That fits it so well.
Well, you made this a little bit more elaborate than I was intending, but I was going to say they could have done this and made it perfectly fine if it were like a post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Or at least the very end after the real conclusion had been reached. They could have, like, I would have been much more okay with it if they just actually finished the goddamn story. And then they were like, oh, by the way, this is a game and it means a lot to people. And then, that would have been a good idea there for a good sentimental moment.
Because
I feel like you can use after credit scenes for things that like you get away with them not impacting the flow of the actual story. So if you think of like an MCU post credit scene, it's always it's never something you need to see. Sometimes it's not even related to the movie you just watched. It's something that, oh, hey, viewer, we want you to see this, but like it's not actually a part of the experience you just had. It's just another thing we think you should know about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they got it wrong and decided to make that part of the conclusion and not something that you just kind of tag on after the conclusion.
I don't think you realize that the bit that I said there, where I said, the with being the hero versus being impacting on the story, I was kind of making that a little bit of a foreshadow, because what I wanted to say was they took what they did with the story, fucking broke it, so that way you're the hero.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for what? And you didn't even beat the final boss, dick.
And like that's the thing.
Like, come on.
If you go off the sharing thing, because how many of us, at least everybody who's played a game has a game that you either share with someone or it means a lot to you. In a sense, with all of us, like we all, like we can use Final Fantasy VII as an example. My girlfriend had never played it, so I sat down and turned on the game, and even though I was the one playing it, she was watching and getting this whole experience, and I was sharing something that meant a lot to me as a kid. Like that story enchanted me.
Yeah.
And she was she was sitting there just having someone, seeing it through someone else's eyes made it more for me again. Because going through it again, I was getting hyped up about stuff that I, even though I knew it was going to happen, I was still like, oh my God, this is when the plate blows up. And oh my God, this is when we see Sephiroth for the first time. And it's like, that's a big, even though like people go, it's just a game, that's still a big moment that a lot of people have. My dad had that with me when he showed me Mega Man 5 for the first time. He loves that game.
Yeah.
And then when I played it, he watched me like lose myself in it. And I know that meant a lot to him. So like you could have had such a great traditional gamer moment shoved into this gamer movie.
Yeah.
And it would have worked.
Well, and think about this too. Like they went the VR route because the twist wouldn't have made sense if the reveal was you've been watching an NES this whole time.
Yeah.
But so the VR route opens up, something like, say, Bryony wanted to play Final Fantasy VII, but say she didn't grow up on games of that era and she wasn't willing to tolerate the dated aspects of it. Like Final Fantasy VII Remake is still going to be an incredible way to show new people this experience, and it could sell them on it. There will be people that couldn't handle playing the original that will all of a sudden get it when they play this new version.
Right.
So like, that was sitting right there for these writers. Or
and the fact
writer
that
singular, I don't know.
They even started the movie with the original 8-bit.
The NES footage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, you set yourself up for that huge success, and you had one job.
Essentially, it's one big. It's sad because it's just one big missed opportunity.
Yeah.
It could have been
it's
like
just
such
a big,
good like staple. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a waste of time. It's disappointing. Like,
okay, viewers, we screwed it up a little bit because the gag was supposed to be we spend most of the episode praising it and then we shit all over it at the last moment, but we've now spent more time shitting on it than praising it.
We did, and then he's suggesting our fixes and recreates.
Yeah, so we didn't nail the bit at all, but attempting to do that was the only reason.
yeah.
We decided to talk about this. And I'm done. Fuck this movie.
Yeah.
It's garbage.
Yeah,
we only praised it at
just-
the beginning for the bit.
Watch.
It is gorgeous, though.
Yeah, watch up until the last fight when you see the kid throw the sword up in the air and just say that it's done.
You know,
If you really
want
wanna
to
watch it.
and then load up a save and just have a good time and forget the movie exists. Just
Yeah, exactly.
use it as like a really pretty trailer for a great experience.
A VR experience.
Oh, okay.
This has been yet another Geek Show. See you next time on our Incredible Hulk Spotlight. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye.